Genesis chapter 45 conclusion. So we're still here on the island of Kolan. There in the back, you can't see it very well, is Pattaya, and down here is like the main town, right? So let's look at the conclusion to this chapter. What is this chapter about? So it starts off, the previous chapter 44 ended with Judah explaining to Joseph why it's not a good idea for Benjamin to stay and be enslaved, and that he's willing ultimately to stay there. And then this chapter starts with Joseph couldn't handle this anymore, and he told his brothers that he is Joseph, and told them to go back to bring their father there. But only after he is sent out all the people, because he didn't want the others to know why that the brothers sold him, because that would have led, I mean, just imagine just walking out in the streets, they were like, the people would say, no, they're Joseph's brothers, and they sold him into slavery, and they would have had to carry that burden all their lives, right? Sure, it's not a problem years later on to say this, to tell the people, because the focus is not going to be ultimately on the brothers and their sin, but it's going to be on God who used that sin so as to achieve the greater good of saving their people, making them grow into a nation, making it possible for them to grow into a big nation, and then ultimately as well to save so many other people, the remnant, as it's stated here. But Pharaoh did find out, because he heard all this crying, this commotion. So they, therefore, what they did find out that these are Joseph's brothers, but what they did not find out. Joseph wanted, Moses trying to make a very important point, and again it shows Joseph as forgiving them. Joseph could easily have told the people, no, those are the guys who sold me into slavery. Okay, they are evil. Okay, he could have done that. He did not do that. He hid their sins from others. Okay, and I think that is as well a very important lesson for us as Christians to learn. Sometimes we get our prayer meetings together and say, I've heard that that person has done this and that, and we need to pray for this person. And I always say, that's just prayer gossip, okay? That's nonsense. We need to stop. We need to pray for each other, but not in such a way where we're actually using our prayers as gossiping to each other about the sins of others. We need to protect our people, to more forgive people, and not make sure that everybody knows about all the sins of what everybody does. That's why, like when it gets to church discipline, you first one person go and tell the person, okay, so to give him a chance to so that the sin won't come out and everybody won't know it, and then two people go, right? So again, it's just in two people knowing, not the whole community. So this person has a chance, but then ultimately, if it does not want to change, right, then everybody needs to know about it. Okay, so this is what Joseph is doing. They already changed, so there's no need for Joseph to go to the rest of the kingdom and tell the people about the sins of the brothers. Okay, that is already a first important lesson. So it shows more about Joseph, it shows his forgiveness, and it shows as well how we need to act towards other people in church, other people we know who sins against us, or who in general just sin. Okay, don't make a public spectacle of it, except where there's people after a number of times, as is stated in the New Testament, doesn't want to change, right? Only then. Important point. It will help people, I spoke about this in the previous video as well, it will help people to be then more open to others, because they know they're not going to be made this public spectacle of it. And in our Protestant churches, that's a weakness. We are too afraid to speak about it because of what it might imply for ourselves. The other important thing is Joseph clearly twice he told them, but this is not what you did, right? This was God sent me here. God, so you yes, you sold me into slavery, but God sent me here. So there's a huge point here concerning human responsibility and God's actions. And this is the main text that people, when it comes to systematic theology and others, to explain this idea of human involvement and God, so human will and God's will and how they interact. Okay, where some people feel just God overrules everything, other people feel that God doesn't overrule anything. Well, the answer is always like somewhere in the middle. Okay, they acted the way they wanted to act. When Moses explained who was responsible for Joseph ending up as a slave, he clearly made it to us. He explained it to us clearly that there was no mistake on Jacob's side. There was no error on Joseph's side. It was all in the brothers. all in the brothers, right? So like for Jacob, he said he's a child of my old age, not because he loved Rachel more. Okay, so they take that responsibility. Joseph, it's just he had the dreams. He told his father, right? There's nothing again on him, but they were the ones who hate him. That was the focus of that chapter. Okay, chapter 37. So, but ultimately above this stand God. So clearly the human will was, we hate our brother. We want to destroy our brother. So we're going to do everything to destroy our brother. Either kill him, then Reuben saved him. Then Judah came out, let's him sell him. Then we can make some money out of it. So God did not force them to hate him. God did not force them to sell them. That was their free choice. Because they're slaves to sin, therefore that slavery to sin forced them, right, to do this. And they therefore did it. There was no need for God to say, you are going to. Even with Judas years later on, God did not force Judas to go and sell Jesus out. He did not force him. That was Judas' choice. Okay? And so the same here as well. This is very clearly stated. But then, Joseph in this chapter 45, he clearly said as well, yes, you sold me into slavery, yes, but ultimately above this stands God. So God allowed for this to happen so that Joseph might end up as a slave, end up in prison, and then ultimately end up as a second in command in the country to save the lives of so many people around and to save the lives of his family, make a place for them where they can grow into a nation. All this. Okay, so there was this, the God allowing their sin to be sin to work out. And then ultimately how God used that in his plan, right? He didn't force them, they did it, but God used it, so out of that could come this conclusion. The same way with Judas and Jesus later on. It's not as God did not force Judas. Judas loved money. We see it stated there, okay? So when all this money was wasted, according to Judas on Jesus, he was angry. This is not going the way he wanted it to go. So he was angry. Not God, did not make him being angry. Right? He was, because this is who he was. This was his sinful nature. And therefore, because of his sin, so I know there are like the Gospel of Judas and stuff like that, where they imply that Judas was actually a good guy. Why? Because if Judas didn't sell Jesus out, then Jesus wouldn't die on the cross, then there would be no salvation. That's utter nonsense. Judas is not a good guy. He was an evil guy. But God used the evil of Judas so as out of that evil to bring forth good. Right? So this is where there's not this tension between the freedom of man and the freedom of God kind of idea. Man is not free. Man is a slave to sin. God is the only free being. There's no one else free but God. Only God can make choices, not because something is above him, but because of who he is. All our choices will always be determined by who we are. Okay, yes, there can be a question of our upbringing, our culture, depends on how we make choices, our own sin. There's lots of things that determine. We don't think like that. We think we are free, we make choices, but man, I've lived in different cultures and I know how cultures work. And the culture of driving here in Thailand, for example, where people, their culture is sabai, like they say. It's an easygoing kind of a culture. Okay, so in other words, if you're on the road, you don't care about other people around you. You need to get from, say, Pattaya to Bangkok, and you just get in the fast lane. You sit there, and it's not a problem. You get there this evening at 4 o'clock, or 5 o'clock, or at 8 o'clock, or at 9 o'clock. What's the problem? I just sit and I drive in a 120 kilometer an hour lane at 90 kilometers an hour, and then everyone is forced to go around me. But I mean, we're all the same culture. We just go sabai, right? And now I'm not saying that this is wrong. I don't like it, but this is their culture. This is their way of doing. So if you want to drive on the roads, you need to adapt to that. If you want to get ahead of them, you would need to make a choice and go around them. Okay. So cultures, they do differ, and that plays a role in us. We who ourselves, our upbringing, growing up in rich, growing up poor, male, female, all these things, they do play a role in why we ultimately make choices. But we are therefore making choices because of this, while God is the only being that makes the ultimate choice. Now God, therefore, the simple thing is he either stop us from fulfilling our evil dreams, like he does every single day, right? Or he sometimes allows for our freedom, our being enslaved to sin to play out, like he did for the brothers, like he did for Judas. They are guilty. They were guilty. Judas was guilty. He was not a good guy. He was guilty. But now God used that ultimately for the greater good, for the salvation of the remnant in Joseph's case, for the salvation of the remnant of his children in Jesus' case. Not just salvation, a temporary for 7 years of eating food, but of salvation for all eternity. Okay, that is a difference between Joseph and Jesus ultimately. Joseph being an antitype of Jesus. A part, certain salvation, an overall salvation, but in both cases for the remnant, for his children, not for everyone on this planet, for the remnant ultimately. I know people are going to crucify me for saying it's not for everyone, but we know, except if you're universalists, we know that everyone will be saved. So ultimately there is a remnant, and only they will be, the elect, they would be saved. Okay, so God, their freedom to sin, God allowed for that freedom, and God using that freedom, so ultimately to fulfill his goal, salvation. So this is, in the end, a very simple way how we can understand our freedom today of the world. Like, you don't just make choices, right? You don't just, yes, brushing your teeth, you know, you watch TV, they show you it's good, you understand, you don't want to spend all your money on a dentist, so you brush your teeth, right? So your choice is influenced by what you see, what you do. But when it gets to a moral choice, you don't choose the right thing, you are a slave to sin, except if you're a Christian. Now then, when you're a Christian, now because you have the Spirit in you, you can make the correct moral choice. But you're always the old man, the new man. There's still sin. We've seen that as well in previous conclusions to previous chapters, right? And so all of that in play here. And God then, so there's no contradiction. There's your freedom. God allows for it. But out of that freedom, out of that evil, God can bring forth good. Because God ultimately is the only one with free will. Only God has full free will. Because there's nothing, if God did not have free will, then there's the person that has the full free will is the God. And if our free will could determine God's free will, then our free will is higher than God's free will. You know, the idea of Jesus knocking on the door and we open the door, we don't open the door, that's utter nonsense. That places us in the place of God. That makes us, we accept God's free will. Yeah, so if, in other words, if God wants us to be saved, we are not saved. We choose against God. In other words, we choose against God's will. And that makes our will more stronger than God's will, which makes us the gods and not God. But in this chapter, we clearly see it. He used the human sickness, that's death, as the Bible in Romans, Paul taught us, to bring forth the good. Okay, so there's no contradiction. Yes, we have free will, but ultimately our free will is determined by so many things, and above our free will stands God's free will. But God uses this free will ultimately in his free will so as to. So we must never forget that God is the only one with full free will, the only one with real free will. Our will is always bound up in so many things around us. And this is the main point that's brought forth or out, and that's used from this chapter.